After a 45-year absence, or 15 years depending on how you look at it, the universally beloved Muppet Show is back with a new special, acting as a pilot episode for a potential full series revival, and actually doing really well. Not only receiving glowing reviews, but incredibly high viewership, two things they have struggled to obtain in recent years. For the first time in a good while, the Muppets are the talk of the town again, as this could potentially be a turning point for the entire franchise. That is, if they and Disney play their cards right. For those who are tuning into this chaotic world for the first time and don't quite understand why this special is such a big deal, let me quickly get you caught up. Ever since the sudden and unexpected passing of creator Jim Henson in 1990, the Muppets have been on a near constant downward spiral as the people in charge didn't know how to keep them relevant. The only saving grace was how much weight they still carried in the world of celebrities, with many of today's famous people having grown up at a time when Kermit the Frog was one of the biggest stars in show business, and where working with the Muppets was seen as the pinnacle of one's career in entertainment. And they have essentially been riding on the goodwill they built up during their heyday for the past 30 years, which at times has been the only thing preventing them from falling into complete obscurity. This situation only worsened when Disney purchased the Muppets in 2004, completing an acquisition process that began in the late 80s. While Disney desperately wanted to own the characters, it quickly became clear they had no idea what to actually do with them, as they just continued throwing them into random projects and hoping for the best. That was until the company was approached by How I Met Your Mother star Jason Segel and his close collaborator Nicholas Stoller. Together with David Hoberman and Todd Lieberman, they put together a soft reboot in the form of the massively successful 2011 movie. A delightful musical adventure that pulled on audience nostalgia while also brilliantly incorporating the franchise's fall from grace into the narrative, as the characters tried to earn back the recognition they once had. 2 years later, it was followed up by Muppets Most Wanted, another home run that served as a true return to form, feeling very reminiscent of the first few movies they did. Unfortunately, Disney didn't market this one nearly as heavily, and the box office numbers reflected that, as the franchise returned to being mostly kept on ice. The projects became even more inconsistent and sporadic, each one a complete coin toss. The people behind the scenes were doing their best, but even when the stars aligned and we got something truly great, the audience simply wasn't there. The 2011 movie is what got me invested in the Muppets, where they stopped being something I simply knew of and became something I obsessed over, learning everything I could about their history and seeking out every piece of media featuring them I could get my hands on. And since then, my life has been filled with a cycle of hopeful optimism, followed quickly by inevitable disappointment over every new project. So, when it came out in late 2025 that Seth Rogen's production company Point Grey Pictures would be working on a new special that would serve as a reboot for The Muppet Show to celebrate its 50th anniversary, I had some concerns. Mainly the fact that the first announcement made no mention of anyone from the creative team at the Muppet Studios being involved with the project. Though this fear was disproven, as Bill Beretta, Chris Ebber, Eric Jacobson, Matt Vogel, and others are all credited as producers. However, nothing could ease the feeling that this whole premise really does come across as an act of desperation. Disney has spent a decade getting frustrated over not finding success with this franchise, despite the true fault lying in them barely advertising any new Muppet projects, so they're throwing in the towel in terms of doing something new. Essentially them saying, we've tried nothing and we're all out of ideas. I was of course excited to just have new Muppet stuff at all, but I didn't want to get my hopes up.
I've been burned before.
That attitude started to change once the various promos and trailers were being rolled out, and it became clear they had nailed the tone and writing, creating something that felt authentic to the Muppets, which had the potential to restore aspects of these characters I never thought we'd see again, as I began eagerly awaiting its release. And now here we are once again, in a moment that feels all too familiar. A nostalgic throwback to the original series, spearheaded by a celebrity who's a big fan of the Muppets that seeks to reinvigorate the franchise while also remaining brutally honest about just how dire things have been for them lately. So, how is it? The Muppet Show 2026 sees the entire cast reunite in their iconic rundown theatre to once again put on a weird and chaotic variety performance. And when I say the entire cast, I mean the entire cast, as due to a miscommunication, Scooter has booked far too many acts for the limited amount of time they've got, leaving Kermit to try and figure out who to cut from the schedule. That means enduring the wrath of Miss Piggy by only allowing her to do one of her planned acts, something she naturally refuses to accept. As usual, Kermit is left spread too thin, trying desperately to rein in the chaos of his friends and stop the entire show from falling apart, especially because of how important this night is for them.
We're still working out a few kinks.
Oh, that's all right. I love a kink.
Before we can get into the highs and lows of this new special, there is something that needs to be fully addressed, and that is Matt Vogel's performance as Kermit the Frog, which many an internet commenter has taken issue with, mainly because it doesn't sound like Steve Whitmire, with everyone and their mom saying they can do a better Kermit impression than that. This sentiment only shows how ignorant people are about everything that goes into performing a Muppet character, and discredits the artists who have dedicated their lives to this craft. To put it simply, so much more goes into the performance than the voice, the most obvious being actually puppeteering the character. Unlike the other Muppets, who have some internal structure, the world's most famous frog is really a highly advanced sock puppet. The performer has to shape Kermit's head entirely with their hand, which is what allows him to be the most expressive, but it also makes him one of the most difficult characters to operate. That is why Vogel was chosen to replace Whitmire, because he had the most experience with the Kermit puppet due to him playing Constantine in Most Wanted. The other thing that is essential is chemistry with the other performers and highly developed improv skills. Because maybe you can say or do a pretty good but could you carry an entire conversation with Fozzie? Could you do a talk show interview or any live event that requires you to think on the fly, never breaking from the performance, all while ensuring everything you say fits the character and his history? With the circumstances being what they were, Vogel was the best person they could have chosen to take on Kermit. The only real problem with his performance has been a lack of screen time. Matt Vogel has been Kermit since 2017, and in that time, all he's been given are minor roles or cameos or the occasional YouTube video. There was a similar backlash when Steve Whitmire first took over Kermit following Henson's passing, though the modern internet makes the campaign against Vogel seem much bigger and more intense because that's what the modern internet does. By the time Steve Whitmire was 9 years into playing Kermit, he already had 3 feature films, a TV show, multiple video games, and a few specials under his belt. And all that allowed audiences to get used to him and his take on Kermit, regardless of how much of a departure it was from how Jim Henson played the character. Matt has not had any of that, with this special being the first chance he's had to lead a project. And I was excited because The Muppet Show is Kermit in his purest form, the stressed out manager who futilely tries to hone in the unpredictability of his collaborators.
Sometimes the crown weighs rather heavy on this little froggy head.
This was Vogel's first real chance to show what he can do as this character, and because of that, we get to see how he's brought back some of Kermit's idiosyncrasies that had been missing from Whitmire's portrayal. It's not a complete transformation, but I'm starting to see glimpses of those rough edges again, where he's allowed to be a little more snarky and isn't a complete pushover. Even outside the special itself, and looking at all the tie-ins and promotions they've done, more and more we are seeing Vogel beginning to shine in this role.
One final question! Did you disconnect the lie detector?
No! What does it say? See, I'm being truthful. Anyway, this has been lovely, but time to go.
Stephanie, did she disconnect?
Don't answer that!
But what would the Muppet Show be without their very special guest? Or guests? in this case. Headlining the special is the latest former Disney Channel child actress turned international superstar, Sabrina Carpenter. And with how her image calls back to the showmanship and glamour of old Hollywood, she fits in perfectly, and you can tell she had a blast working with the Muppets. One thing I love is the implication that while she does want to be here, doing the Muppet Show is somewhat beneath her, because that was a thing in the original.
I mean, I could have been anywhere else in the world tonight. I turned down a Pulitzer Prize and getting my face on the new Quarter and a second date with...
Really? He's single?
No.
There's this interesting dichotomy to the Muppets. In the real world, they are these globally recognised icons, but that can never be part of how they are seen on screen. Because at their core, what makes the Muppets so real and human is that they are constantly presented as struggling artists. In the old show, you will find plenty of examples of a guest whose entire storyline is that they are not happy to be there. And Kermit has to constantly stop them from walking out, often having to get a tad manipulative.
Oh, but gee, Carol, I just did want you to do your asparagus sketch.
My what?
So I greatly appreciate that while the special of course holds a lot of reverence for the Muppet Show, it keeps hints of that intact. Of course, the highlight of Sabrina's appearance is her dynamic with Miss Piggy, because both of their personas take heavy influence from the divas of the cinematic golden age, which the special takes advantage of by pointing out how the two have a very similar aesthetic.
I basically modeled my whole look and style after you.
Oh, trust me, my attorneys and I have taken notice and we will be in touch.
Oh.
This time around, there are two other guest stars, the first being Seth Rogen, who, in a fun jab at the fourth wall, plays the show's executive producer, and has a few decent bits that don't overstay their welcome.
Your cat. I'm the executive producer.
Then you can let yourself know we're going in a different direction.
And finally, there's Maya Rudolph, who is one of the show's audience members and has her own little subplot where sparks fly between her and beautiful Day Monster, which leads to one of the funniest moments of the whole special.
This is a Muppet News Flash! Emmy Award-winning comedy icon Maya Rudolph is dead!
If this is going to move forward into a full series, what I would really love to see is them use this idea to bring back some of the original Muppet Show guests who are still with us. Could you imagine randomly cutting to the audience during an episode and seeing people like Mark Hamill, Linda Carter, or Rita Moreno? While Kermit, Piggy, and Scooter receive the most focus, everyone else gets a line thrown in here and there, with plenty of background cameos or brief appearances from once forgotten characters like Hilda, the backstage seamstress who only appeared in season 1 of the original series. If there was one character I felt was not utilised fully, I'd say it felt strange seeing Fozzie have so little of a role. Like, this is a celebration of the Muppet Show, and you're not gonna have him go on stage and get heckled by Statler and Waldorf. Speaking of the stage, let's talk about the bulk of the show, the acts. The special opens with Sabrina Carpenter performing her recent hit song Manchild, but recontextualised as she beats up a bunch of Frackles portraying rowdy patrons in a roadside bar owned by Sam, while she's backed up by the Muppet Chickens. This was such a fantastic opening, and is full of all these fun little details that make it endlessly rewatchable. I love Sam slowly losing his mind in the background, and of course you have Crazy Harry creating a hurricane that causes the chickens to lose their feathers. Physically interacting with the Muppets is such a difficult thing to pull off convincingly, but she really sells the entire thing. Manchild is followed by what can be considered the first returning act, and that is, of course, the Great Gonzo, who attempts a deadly obstacle course on motorized roller skates while reciting every winner for Best Supporting Actress at the Oscars. This is very much in line with the type of things Gonzo used to do. It was always him doing this incredibly daring stunt while simultaneously performing another unrelated task, usually reciting something or playing a piece of music. You would have him performing Shakespeare while dangling from his nose, or listing the 7 times tables while balancing a piano and standing on a hammock. And like all of those, this one backfires. quite literally, as Gonzo starts skating backwards, creating a fun running gag where throughout the rest of the special, Gonzo will randomly pass through a scene continuing to name the winning actresses.
And as long as I have this list in my hands, the show will go off without a hitch.
Oh, Monique!
It was exactly the right amount of screen time for our lovable whatever, and it was great seeing the character somewhat go back to his roots. And next we have the only real sketch of the special, Pigs in Wigs, which was also my least favourite part of the whole thing, and not just because I learned the shot of the ballroom from the trailer wasn't an At the Dance segment. The sketch is supposed to be a Bridgerton-esque restoration period spoof where Piggy is caught in a love triangle that falls apart. The thing is, this sketch highlights an issue I have with how Piggy has been presented since the 2010s. Don't get it twisted, I adore Eric Jacobson's performance, and he's given us some of Piggy's best moments, but I feel like certain attempts to modernise her have ended up missing the point of her character. The whole idea behind Miss Piggy is her image is entirely fabricated. The sophistication with the overzealous glamour and the fake French, it's all meant to be an act. A mask that is constantly slipping due to outbursts of manic energy where we see the real Miss Piggy. But moving into the modern era, she is too well put together. Her passion and anger has dissolved into passive aggression and sarcastic comments, which are very funny, as this special demonstrates. And the underlying humanity of her vibrato being a thinly veiled cover-up for some deep insecurities, that is still there, but the energy she once had has been significantly diminished. This should be absolutely hilarious. Piggy gets this starring role only for literally everything to go wrong, all building to a classic meltdown where she snaps and destroys the entire set. And I think that's what this was supposed to be, because it ends with her screaming and then we cut back to the audience and there's this cloud of smoke over them, as if something very destructive just happened off screen. But we don't see any of that, so all we're left with is a pretty boring joke that cuts off right before the punchline. Aside from that though, I do feel like the special as a whole puts Piggy back on the right track. She does have these unhinged moments, like her rampage after she learns Kermit cut one of her numbers, and I hope to see that taken further in the full series. Somewhere there is a perfect middle ground between her being this sassy icon without losing her fiery passion that made her so beloved in the first place, and I think they are making progress in finding that. Back on stage, we have the much anticipated return of Rizzo, now played by Bradley Freeman Jr., joined by the other rats in a performance of the song Blinding Lights. While the performance itself is great, and I am eager to see more of Freeman's Rizzo in the future, what I really want to highlight in this act, and the whole special, is the incredible sets that were designed by Tom Wagman and decorated by Bethany Barton. They do feel quite elaborate in how there is this greater sense of depth to them, but it never loses that homemade charm, as it still feels like something you'd see in a low-budget community theatre production. Besides Gonzo, the only other act from the original that appears is, of course, Muppet Labs, which gives us another example of how the special is able to subtly modernise the Muppet Show in ways that aren't too distracting, with Dr. Bunsen Honeydoo's latest invention aiming to combat the issue of humanity's vastly lowering attention spans in the age of digital media.
These days, everything is competing for your eyeballs. Mobile devices, televisions, and the day-to-day terrors that consume our brains when we aren't looking at the first two.
But when Beaker gives it a try, some unforeseen side effects make themselves apparent. Sabrina's second and final number is a duet with Kermit and later Miss Piggy, covering the song Islands in the Stream, and it is absolutely perfect. I wish I had more to say about it, because this is the second best highlight of the special to me. We need to start calling him Matt Vocal, because this guy's got pipes and his harmonies with Sabrina are wonderful.
Does this mean we're good then? You're not gonna try to sue me for stealing your look?
It's called copyright infringement, sweetie. And of course not! That's really for the lawyers to decide.
and everything has been building to the finale. Tensions rise backstage over who the final act will be until Kermit finally snaps at them. Backstage settles down as the frog suddenly gets an idea.
Look, do you trust me?
Well, of course we do, Kermit.
Kermit leaves them all and goes to address the audience, being completely open and vulnerable to them about what's been happening, leading to him refusing to announce the final act. Instead, he starts singing Queen's Don't Stop Me Now, as everyone slowly realizes what's happening and enters the stage, the energy ramping up as they all join together for an emotional and triumphant finale. However, there is something much deeper going on here, as the song choice was clearly intentional for what this moment and the special represent. After over a decade of being mishandled by their corporate overlords, who have undermined every attempt the Muppet Studios have made to revitalize the franchise, they know that, to a certain degree, this is their Hail Mary. Their last chance to prove to the out-of-touch Disney executives that this beautiful and magical thing still has the cultural staying power it once did. That they're not some relic or novelty from a bygone era. It's the Muppet performers and the entire creative team who have dedicated themselves to keeping this thing going, pleading for a chance to continue this legacy and to keep doing what they love. What really clinches it for me is how the number starts. Kermit fully exposed, singing by himself, until Rolf joins by accompanying him because they were the two characters that pretty much started this whole thing. Then everyone else pours in and the energy becomes electrifying because even after all these years and all the changes they've been through, there is still some lightning left in that bottle. There are certainly issues I've taken with aspects of this special, but none of those detract from this moving celebration of these characters and their history, which can only be described as a labour of love. Shout out to the entire writing team for the special: Albertina Rizzo, Gabe Leidman, Neda Swice, Kelly Younger, and Andrew Williams. All that work absolutely paid off because the special has been a roaring success. And you do not know how good it feels to have those words leave my mouth, because all that hopeful optimism I've been clinging to, which I've shown in older Muppet videos, has finally been vindicated. Upon its TV premiere on ABC, the special drew over 3 million live viewers, and combining that with Disney Plus numbers, in its first 8 days, The Muppet Show has been watched 7.58 million times. That is fantastic news on its own, but it's not the statistic I want to focus on. Because at that same time, combined Disney Plus viewership of every Muppet project on the service rose to 125 million hours. And that is what is really exciting to me. This special isn't a one-time curiosity. It's creating new fans and getting people invested in the franchise as a whole. The very idea that because of this, people are going back and checking out projects like Muppets Most Wanted or Muppets Mayhem, that is an incredible feeling. It takes me back to when the 2011 movie came out, and it made me watch The Muppet Show and the original trilogy of movies for the first time, and they changed my life. At this point, more episodes are pretty much a guarantee. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's been confirmed that while no official announcement has been made, the writers are already working on them. And while I will be over the moon if that gets an announcement soon, especially if we get guest stars like Pedro Pascal, Chapel Roan, Cynthia Erivo, and Nick Offerman, and could potentially bring back Pigs in Space or Veterinarian's Hospital, I do have to say that I still have one more concern about this whole thing. A full series revival of The Muppet Show is great, But that cannot be the end goal. What this series needs to be is a springboard to get a whole bunch of new projects going at once, because that is the only way to truly revitalize the property. It can't be taken one step at a time. It needs to be a complete onslaught of new material that once again makes these characters ever present in popular culture. I'm talking new books, TV specials, music, movies, spin-offs. For decades, people have been clamoring for another Muppet adaptation of a classic novel, and in 2017, they released a book that was the Muppets doing Phantom of the Opera. Just make that into a movie. And while we're at it, give Adam Goldberg and Jeff Yorks another project already, because Mayhem was too good to be a one and done. They took characters I enjoyed but never really thought that much about, and fleshed them out so much they became some of my favourites. To a point where it was kind of difficult here seeing them return to having such minor roles. I want to see what these guys can do with other characters, because they've already said they have ideas. Hope is a very beautiful, but very dangerous thing, and it's difficult to wrap my head around what might be happening. This moment right now almost doesn't feel real, like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop any second and this all turns out to be some cruel trick. But so far, that hasn't happened. And it actually seems like this is the best position the franchise has been in since 2011. Which is unbelievable considering less than a year ago we were all mourning the closure of Muppet Vision 3D, which honestly felt like the darkest hour with no new projects seemingly on the horizon. But now with this special and the likelihood of it getting picked up for a full series, the upcoming Rock and Roller Coaster theme, and that supposed Miss Piggy movie, this is the chance we've been waiting for. So please, don't screw it up. And that is everything I have to say about The Muppet Show 2026. If you enjoyed my inane ramblings, remember to subscribe, and if you're feeling generous, support me over on Patreon. Check out my other Muppet videos, and tell me your thoughts on the special down below. Till we meet again, I'm Jake, and thanks for visiting my Mind Palace. Now, I'm gonna go past the time until they announce the revival has been fully picked up by watching the special 20 more times.